The greatest things in life all start with a challenge.
You must accept that everything is hard before it gets easy.
Everything you want in life begins with a hard path.
Welcome to the Choose Hard podcast. I am your host, Cody McBroom. I am a father, husband, an entrepreneur, and the founder and CEO, Tailored Coaching Method, a world-renowned online fitness and nutrition coaching company that is helping people transform their bodies and their minds all around the world. Today, I'm going to give you my 12 training principles to prioritize when writing online coaching programs. So this is specific to fitness and training. We're not going to touch on diet. We're not going to touch on any of that. Dieting and nutrition, that is honestly the bigger role of what we do. That is a massive part of what we do at Tailored Coaching Method, because we primarily serve people who want to lose fat. That is our main niche. And because that's our main niche, we have to prioritize nutrition. As you know, if you're listening to this, you probably understand that is the biggest player. Because of that, and two other reasons, which I'll explain in a sec, I felt really called to put something like this together. Actually, there's 5 things that really led to this podcast, and this was an Instagram post before, so if you haven't seen that post, you can check it out on my Instagram. I'll try to link it in the description. It's a carousel post, so you can swipe through these, and each swipe, even each picture on the post has a lot of information on it, because this is a very complex topic, but I still wanted to shoot a podcast on it because I wanted to be able to touch on it for more than just what you see in your newsfeed and can read in a few minutes. I wanted to do this for 30 to 45, maybe even 60 minutes. We'll see how long this is today, because this is a topic that needs to be discussed. I think that there is a lot. I mean, it's bad. There's a lot of really bad training plans out there, and social media has only made it worse. Influencers have only made it worse. There was a few things that happened that kind of led me to writing this post, and it was really well received. And I've noticed that with a lot of the type of content I do like this, because I have a lot of coaches and trainers and nutritionists that follow me and that consume my content, which is an honor, because I know that one of my goals is to change the industry. So one of the ways I'm going to best serve the industry and help influence it in a positive way is by putting out more content like this. So first of all, I have had the opportunity to create content. I've had a lot of new followers following me on Instagram, a lot of new people listening to the podcast, all of which to say they're all coaches. I mean, not all coaches, but a lot of them are coaches. I mean, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of coaches and trainers and dietitians and nutritionists have been consuming my content lately and reaching out to me. It's why I've actually started doing more mentoring. So in fact, I wasn't planning on dropping this, but shameless plug, I'll put this in the description as well. We now offer 2 different types of coaching. Really, we've always offered 2 different kinds, but I've been quiet about it. I've never talked about my mentorship. I just let people reach out to me if they felt like there was a shot, or maybe we connected, because basically there was a bigger layer, like a bigger gap there, and that forced only the really serious people to approach me and reach out and cross their fingers and hope I did something like that, which usually worked out well because it meant they're really serious. And I wasn't really trying to attract people to help mentor, but now I am. One of my biggest missions is really to help influence industry, as I just said a minute ago. And so I've been taking on a small group of people, and I'm putting together this program where I do work with these individuals one-on-one. I help them transform their body, transform their business, develop their content strategy, learn principles and strategies and methods that we use in order to really get the most amazing transformations in the industry. And I say that very easily and very confidently, because our transformations are just insane. And we've been in the industry for 15 years, learned for some of the best in the world at training and nutrition, and we have some really good methods now. So all that to say, I'm going to put a link in the description. If you are a coach, specifically an online coach, or looking to go online with your fitness business, and you want help, you want to be mentored, you want to be guided by somebody who has done it, who knows it really well, and who has become successful at it through just passion and really just great coaching, not ads, not funnels, none of that shit, just really good business and coaching. Click the link in the description, apply for the spot. There's a video on there where I talk about it. We'll go from there. So that was kind of one reason. I've been approached by all these people. The second reason is because I've been getting asked to speak more. So I just got done speaking in North Carolina in front of a bunch of coaches at Sam Miller's event, which was amazing. Really, really phenomenal group of people and really, really phenomenal setup for the seminar. Honestly, it was one of my favorite seminars I've ever been a part of. And I don't say this because I like putting together presentations, but I didn't have to put a prezo together, which was kind of nice. He interviewed me on stage, and it was like a podcast. It was like a live podcast. It was pretty dope. And then the second day was all Q&A panels, and then like speed dating. I had this table, and then these groups would come up and get to pick my brain, ask questions. So much fun. And then I'm speaking tomorrow in an online summit in front of a couple hundred coaches for Luca Hosevar's group. And it's just been really cool. And I have a couple more coming up in the near future too that I can't say yet, but I'm getting the opportunity to educate coaches more, and it's been really, really exciting and really fun. And honestly really, really good. Like it's been going really well. They've been getting a lot out of it. The third reason is because I created principles for my business as I started delegating things. So as my team has grown, I've had to put principles in place. This is something that a lot of online coaching businesses, this was something that a lot of businesses, period, don't really consider, especially in the fitness space. I don't know that many coaches who do this kind of stuff. I don't know how many gym owners that do this. But if you don't have like an SOP, like standard operating procedures for programming, for nutrition, for coaching check-ins, for things that really develop and make your service what it is. I see a lot of people with SOPs about like locking the doors at night and making sure you turn off these lights and clean this part and make sure that you respond to emails within this many hours. It's like, okay, but what about the movement patterns associated? What about handling aches and pains? What about check-in processes and professionalism there and exceeding expectations and following your core values? Like not a lot of people do that. And one of the things that we did is implement principles for our training. Like these are the principles that we require. Now, there's more to the program design can of worms, let's say, because it's a whole portal of things you can really get into. But as I developed this principles, it was because I needed somebody else on my team to be able to do this with me at the level I do it, to help the team do it efficiently and effectively, whether we stay the same size or we grow or we're educating and mentoring coaches. And so Nick on my staff, who helps run the training department of my company, I put these together, and this is how we developed the systems that really kind of he built his role on. We built his role on, which has been really cool. Few reasons there. The fourth reason is because people suck at training programs. Like it's just really bad. Like I'm shocked at how many gym owners don't write their own programs, at how many coaches don't write their own programs. And I think this is one of the things that, online coaches, like, look, I'm a nutrition guy. I love nutrition. It is what helps us with fat loss the most. However, if somebody's not training effectively, they're still not going to get the same result, and they're not going to be as bought in. They're not going to enjoy the process as much. There is something about training that really, really makes you different. It's what makes you more disciplined, more gritty, have a better work ethic. It is what really gives you those endorphins. Like I always tell people, you don't get this huge endorphin release after meal prep or tracking your macros for the day. You do that because it gets a result, and the result gives you dopamine. And then it's this feedback loop of like, I will do the thing I don't like doing to get the result that I really like having. And as important as that is, because there's a lot of things in life like this, and I'll say it again, because this is actually, I sped by that, and I think this is a really important thing. This line alone helps so much. If you want to continue getting the results you want to have to be willing to do the things you don't always want to do. And it's a feedback loop. You don't get this endorphin release or dopamine kick when you meal prep or you punch all your food into MyFitnessPal to figure out your macros. That stuff doesn't feel great afterwards, but it gives you a result. The result makes you feel good when you have it, and that result, and when you have it and when you see it and somebody gives you a compliment about it, that releases endorphins. That gives you a dopamine kick, and that is what allows you to get addicted to the process. But there is a gap between action and result. You take the action of tracking the macros, and you got to wait for the result to happen. But as long as you do that in the beginning and you are okay with waiting and really just kind of sitting through the suck and maybe some of the stuff you don't love doing, maybe you don't mind it, but maybe you hate it, whatever it is, you got to be able to do that until you get to the result, right? And once you get the result, now it's a positive feedback loop. I will continue doing the things I don't want to do to get the result I really want to have. Now, training is totally different. You go to the gym, the moment you rack that bar, you feel good. The moment you leave the gym, you feel good. While you're in the gym, you feel good. Sometimes you don't feel good when you're going to the gym if you don't feel like training, but once you start, you feel good. If you don't feel like meal prep, you don't really feel good during it still. And then maybe afterwards, you feel good that you did it, but it's more of like, I'm proud of myself for doing it. Not like, ooh, I got this this feedback. Like, I love that. Like, that's not how it works. So I think this necessary component to training that coaches need to understand, this can give your clients more of a positive feedback loop and keep them on board for longer, keep them in the game for longer. It's really, really important. Now, one of the biggest things though, and this is number 5 reason I wanted to do this, and there's a reason why I'm telling you guys why I'm doing this, is because all of them kind of layer in how important this stuff is. But the 5th and most important reason that led me to wanting to create, I shouldn't even say create, because I've had these built out in my business, wanted me to share these principles, is because there's a huge gap between me and my online client compared to somebody in the gym. When I'm in the gym with somebody, I can put my hand on their back and show them by touch and make them feel my hands and putting pressure on their scapula as they do external rotation or scapular retraction or depression. Like, I can literally guide their joint into place. That is a very valuable tool. I can also watch somebody in person and then spit out cue after cue after cue that gets them to squat better or do the movement better. I can't do that over the internet. There's a huge gap. my clients in Kansas or Florida or Colorado or wherever. I can't do that. So what I can do is take all the years and years and years of experience, which unfortunately some online coaches don't have, but they should have. Or if you're getting into the space, make sure you try to get this. That in-person experience is just, it's so valuable. It's priceless. It's such a big value add to your career and your ability to be a great coach. But if I take all that and I know what cues typically work for the majority of people, I can write those out in their plan. I can speak those into them on a weekly basis, and then they will click. And this works really well. However, there's been plenty of people that are online that have applied to work with us and wanted to work with us. And I'm like, hey, we can do your nutrition. We can help you with your goal, but I think you should see an in-person trainer. And that's hard to do, but as a business owner, it's more important for me to be very transparent and authentic and serve people to the best ability. And I know for a fact there's been plenty of times where somebody is so fresh and so new to training that they actually do need those eyes and those hands on them in person. And I am okay admitting that, and I am okay losing that client financially speaking so that they can gain the results they really want to gain. Okay. And I think it's really important. But when we get to this place of like, the majority of people who come to us because our marketing is good and our message is very transparent, people know what we do and who we do it for, we get people that aren't beginners typically. We get people that, even if they're technically beginners, like newbies or intermediates, they know what they're doing. They've been lifting enough that their technique's good and they're safe in the gym, so we can coach them online. And that's what we do. That is 99.9% of our business is online. The 0.01 is me going and speaking at events. So that being said, there has to be specific standards and principles and rules in place to make sure that when you do coach this person online, you are doing it in the most effective, safe, and progressive way possible. And that's why these principles are so important. And that's why instead of me hiding these to myself, I want to share them for the online coaches who are listening. People who are not coaches, you'll still get a lot of value out of this podcast. But I really wanted to do this for all the online coaches so that they can understand if you don't have these things in place, you are going to run into issues, be that injury, nagging pain, imbalances in compensations of their movement patterns, lack of results, slower progress made because they're not gaining strength. You have to look at these rules and be able to implement something similar, or if you want to steal them from me, do it. I don't care. My goal is to make the industry better. So if I have hundreds and hundreds of coaches that listen to this and you use the exact same principles I do and it makes their programming better, I won. My mission is partially complete because I have to keep doing it to be fully complete, but that's part of what I want to do. Okay. So these are the 12 principles to prioritize when writing online training programs. First, and mind you, these are not in any particular order. Got to keep drinking my energy drink. I gotta lift after this. I ran 6.5 miles this morning and I did not want to do it. I posted on my story and it was like, I know I'm digressing, but every single mile I was like, oh, I should just throw in the towel now. I got a call at 8:30 a.m., which means I got to get home in time. I'm like making these excuses, knowing damn well I could finish it if I really wanted to. And then I would, quarter mile later, I'd be like, fuck that, dude, you can do this. And I would run and I'd be super proud of myself. And I'm like, I'm not going to listen to that little bitch voice in my head. And then I would get to the next mile and I'd clock and my watch would be like, next mile complete. Continue running. And I'd be like, all right, dude, this is it. You probably should head home. Like I started doing it again. And then I was like, no, you're the man. You can do this. And I got proud. And then it was like this loop constantly, literally every single mile until 6.5 miles. It was ridiculous. And I posted on my story and I had a bunch of people already respond this morning. And they're like, I do this every single run. And I was like, yeah, me too. You're not alone. Trust me. Anyway, I don't know why I felt like I needed to share that, but there's probably some people who can relate. So here's principle number 1. And this is in no particular order. In fact, I'm going to actually give you a teaser of what they all are. I'm going to go through them all so that you can hear them and then you can get excited and understand what you're about to listen to. And again, these are in no particular order. So here's the 12 principles. 4 to 6 week training blocks. And these are mesocycles. So we have 4 to 6 week training blocks. Push, pull, hinge, squat, which means we are prioritizing 4 movement patterns. We are going to use a double progression method. We are going to prioritize exercise sequencing. We are going to pull 1.5, not double, but 1.5 times more than we push or press, and I'll explain why it's 1.5. We're going to include at least 1 unilateral exercise every single workout, every single session. We're going to implement 1 ZOA exercise, which means zone of apposition, and I'll explain what that is later, in every single session. We're going to not repeat, so do not repeat loading patterns throughout a single session. include 1 to 2 stretch-based movements or exercises. We're going to prioritize 1 to 2 aerobic conditioning sessions per week that last 30 to 45 minutes each. We're going to set our set volume between 10 and 20 sets per muscle per week in that range, and there's some differences as to why and where you will land on that. We're going to use the RIR scale across all exercises, not RPE, for very specific reasons. Okay, so those are the 12. And again, these are principles, these are rules, these are standards, these are like practices that we follow because we believe that they are very important and they have a very specific reason as to why they help our training maintain effectiveness at a very high degree, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, I was like, is that 12? That went by quick. All right, so number 1, 40-week training blocks. This is going to serve multiple purposes. The reason we stick with 4 to 6 week training blocks and the reason I recommend them is there's multiple benefits to this. The first one is pretty obvious for anybody who's an online coach, and this is because you're typically going to bill somebody every 4 weeks, right? If you're on like a monthly subscription for billing, which is not, if you're charging people every month, this is a mistake I made for a long time as a business owner. In a subscription-based business, it actually is, one, you're missing out on multiple weeks of revenue at the end of the year. But it's not just that you're missing out on weeks, and because I don't care about that. And I felt dumb for thinking about this earlier on because when I first thought of that or heard that, I was like, I don't care about, it's not about the money, so who cares? Like, it's easier for people to just bill monthly. But then I realized it's not that we're missing out on extra weeks as if it's like a sneaky thing. It's actually we're not getting paid for multiple weeks of our coaching. So most months actually have 5 weeks. So if you're charging monthly, there's usually going to be a month that has a week that goes unnoticed, that basically gets unpaid. And that means you and your coaches are working with people for numerous weeks throughout the year, not getting paid for your services and what you do. And that's not okay because we're putting a lot of effort into it. So number 1, this is just kind of goes along with billing cycles. So knowing that, it's like every 4 weeks you're billing a client, and that means that you should probably have a mesocycle every week. This way you're not jumping ahead and doing work that has not been paid for, and it's a very easy like cadence to line up with reoccurring billing. Now, the second reason when we get into the science and stuff is that this actually allows a good accumulation of progression for any given client. Week 1, they typically learn the new exercise. So if we implement a new program, week 1, they actually start to get used to the exercise and they're trying to learn it. So if somebody's never done a Bulgarian split squat, and I put this in their program, or maybe it's a front foot elevated dual kettlebell front racked reverse lunge, a little bit more complex, a little bit more functional. There's a little bit more going on. We're front racked, so we have to maintain a very solid posture, pulled down rib cage, braced and stiff core and trunk. We're trying to keep our grip tight and our shoulders packed so that the kettlebells stay racked in the right position. While maintaining that posture, we have to do a reverse lunge. Oh, and we're on a plate. It's in a deficit. So that way we have a bigger range of motion, which leads to a bigger stretch, more fatigue. So this is new. We're going to go light. We're going to practice things properly and just slow down, right? Week 2, they come back in. It's like, okay, I know the exercise a little bit better, but I'm going to stick with the same weight. However, we're doing, as you'll hear in a sec, double progression method, which means that we have a rep range. We're hitting 8 to 10 reps, let's say. Last week, I did 3 sets of 8 with this weight. I'm going to try to do 3 sets of 10 because I feel more comfortable with it, but I still don't want to go up a whole nother weight in my kettlebell. So I'm going to practice this. I'm going to do a couple extra reps on every set. I'm going to make sure I'm doing a full range of motion. I'm going to get that big, deep stretch I'm supposed to. And then from there, week 3 hits, and now you feel good. You hit 10 reps last week. We're going to go back to that 8 to 10 range, probably floating closer to the 8 rep range, and I'm going to load it up. I'm going to go heavier. I'm going to create tension. I'm going to just push myself as hard as I can. Now, week 4 comes, and we do one of two things. We either deload before the next week, because in some cases, there's a rationale to say, hey, we're going to deload here because next week's new exercises and that novelty is probably going to stimulate some muscle damage and soreness. However, for most people, it's not that they've never done a squat or a split squat. They've just never done that specific type of split squat or lunge. And in that case, we might not need it. On top of that, this person might be training 3 or 4 days a week because they're an average person. We don't need a deload. You maybe deload every few months at most. So week 4 actually goes into let's push hard. Now that we push hard, week 1 of the next program will act as our deload because we're going lighter to learn the movements. And it's a really good skill, right? A really good cycle of progression. Week 1, we learn a new movement. Week 2, we get comfortable and confident with that movement. Week 3, we begin to play with some progressions through increasing load. And week 4, we go hard. We try to push ourselves, get close to failure. That is a very, very simple but smart and productive progression scheme. And that falls into a 4-week plan. This is a really, really good way to do it. The other thing here is that I mentioned 4 to 6 weeks. So what does that mean? Well, let's say week 3 comes, and although this person's feeling good and excited, they actually are training out of hotels all week. So we have to modify. We're doing some different things. Okay, well, let's add a 5th week, because at the end of the day, they didn't really get the full thing out of the program. Or let's say this person didn't have to go travel and train out of a hotel, but we get to a point where they are essentially, while they're progressing really well. And if we stop and change the program at week 5, like, so basically this is a 4-week block and we don't go further than that, they're missing out on potential gains because they've increased load 2 weeks in a row. They feel confident about doing it again. Why would I change it? So there's 2 options here. Either I change most things and keep the things that they're maintaining progress with, because we can keep that dumbbell or that kettlebell racked deficit reverse lunge for 12 weeks. If you keep progressing, there's no reason to change it, right? Or we just don't change anything and we push to 6 weeks. Either way, it's acceptable. But the point is that most often a mesocycle, which is going to be a single like block of training, it's probably going to be around 4 to 6 weeks. This tends to be the best route to take. After 6 weeks, some people can keep progressing movements, but in my experience, they're probably going to progress better if they actually stop the exercise to switch it switch it to a different variation and then come back to that variation. So let's say we do push it for 6 weeks and they're still progressing. We're going to remove that lunge and we're going to go with a Bulgarian split squat next. And then we're going to do another 4 to 6 week block. And that might be a dumbbell walking lunge for that split squat variation. And then we're going to go into another 4 to 6 week block and we're going to bring back that dual kettlebell front racked deficit reverse lunge. It's been a while, but they've gained strength. They've gotten leaner. They're healthier. Their movement's better. They're going to crush that movement again. So we can skip a beat and come back to it and still progress a lot. We don't have to keep hammering it and run the risk of overuse injuries. So 4 to 6 weeks is almost always going to be your best bet. For us, that is just what we do. And I think it's really important for any type of business owner or coach running a coaching staff and team. I think it's very important that you set the standards and the principles in place. You don't we all go through this at one point, but if you have too much fluidity inside of your training principles and standards, you're just asking for coaches on staff to kind of fall outside the lines. And you're also asking yourself to get lazy, because this has even happened to me. It's like, well, you can do this. You can do this. You're less efficient because you don't have principles that guide your decisions and make decisions quicker. You don't have a template that you can use. And this does not mean giving a client a template. It means that you have templates and blueprints and skeletons of programming that you can plug and play on the back end that makes your job more effective and more efficient. And this blurs the lines. And so you don't have any rules or standards to prevent very specific things from happening. This way, I know clients aren't going to get too bored. I know they're going to be able to progress. I know they're not ever going to get overuse injuries. Is everybody going to get overuse injuries at 6 weeks? No, that's stupid. But will some? Yes. Okay, how do we avoid it? Don't go past 6 weeks, right? Like, it's very, very simple. But this is just to explain, since this is the first principle, I want to make sure I really hammer that home. They are very important to have. You got to have these in place. And the same thing with nutrition. Next, we have movements: push, pull, hinge, squat. So push, pull, hip hinge, squat pattern. These are the 4 primary functional movement patterns for strength training. And your body, everybody's body, should be able to do these in some capacity, and they should be able to perform with them. Now, if somebody can't do a squat, then we have to work on the mechanics and their limitations. There's been plenty of people, especially when I was an in-person trainer, who would say, like, I can't squat. Like, I don't squat well. My body just can't get down there, can't get in that position. I would put them on the floor, put their feet up on the wall, put them in a squat position, but lying on their back, and they have the mobility. And this is a test. It doesn't mean everybody can do it, but if you can do that, I go, hey, based on what I see, you're in like, if I took a picture of you and then I removed the background and just rotated upwards, you would be doing a perfect squat. So mobility isn't the issue. Stability is. Stiffness in your trunk is. Core strength is. And now we know what to address. But regardless, we got to squat. It's not like I can't squat, so let's remove squats. It's I can't squat well, so let's fix what we need to fix in order to squat well, right? Same thing with push, pull, hinge. Your body should go through these movements. So these 4 movement patterns are key for us. And it's a non-negotiable that we prioritize them throughout the week and ensure that by the end of every training week, they've all been performed. So for example, if somebody's doing an upper-lower split, I don't expect that client to go through a squat and a hip hinge on an upper body day. That doesn't make sense. It's an upper body day. Even if it's a full body program, this is also a good example. I don't expect them to do a squat, but they should be doing a squat pattern. Maybe it's a split squat, a reverse lunge, or maybe it is a squat, a goblet squat, a landmine squat, a back squat. Like, we need to be doing those movements. So in a full body program, we should do a squat, hinge, and pull. If it is a squat, hinge, push, pull, if it is a full body program that is more dominantly upper body, I might not do a squat and a hinge, but I'm gonna at least do one of them. And by the end of the week, I'm ensuring that I've done at least one, if not multiple, squats, hip hinges, horizontal push. If their shoulder health is good, vertical push, horizontal pull, and if their shoulder health is good, vertical pull. And I say that because getting overhead is more difficult, so it's not mandatory. Like vertical pulling, like a lat pull down or chin up, is not mandatory. If they can do it, it should be mandatory. If they can do it pain-free, we should do it. Same thing with overhead pressing. It's not mandatory at first. I think after a while, this is part of being a functional and strong individual. You should be able to go overhead with weight. You should be able to pull weight from overhead. And so we want to be able to do them all. But all this really means is that when we look at a program across the week, are we accomplishing a push, pull, hip hinge, squat? Really, really simple. This is like going back to the basics of movement patterns. We need to be able to do that. Next, principle, progression. So we have the double progression method. What a double progression method is the easiest way to explain this is if there's two types of progressions that are pretty common, and then both of them work. There is a linear progression model. This is great for brand new individuals. And I think it can work for anyone. I think that double progression methods are better, obviously. I also think in the online setting, it ensures better success because we have to put tools in place to allow somebody to auto-regulate better. So let me define some of these terms. Linear progression is when we have a load that is increasing, so our intensity is going up, and our reps are going down, so our volume is decreasing. So week by week, intensity or load is going up, and volume or reps is going down. And so what this looks like is, let's say I have 100 pounds and I'm doing it for 10 reps on any exercise. Week 2, I'm going to go 8 reps with 105, 110 pounds. So I added load, so my intensity went up and my load went up because I added weight to the bar, but my reps went from 10 to 8. So my volume, my rep count went down. This guarantees that I can do more weight. Then on week 6, on week 3, we have 6 reps and I'm going 115, 120 pounds. Again, my load or intensity, my weight on the bar went up and my reps or my volume went down. And so this is what is a linear progression. A double progression method is a way of auto-regulating that. So let's say I'm going 10, 8, 6. A double progression method would mean I go from 6 to 10 reps. A lot of times I keep it in a 2 rep range. So I might go 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 20. So as I go up in reps and I'm doing more of a hypertrophy zone, like high muscular endurance, high metabolite accumulation, these high reps like 15 plus, I do make it a bigger gap, right? So that's why it was, let's say 3 to 5, then it's 6 to 8, then it's 8 to 10, then it's 10 to 12, then it's, and sometimes I'll do like 8 to 12, but most often it's 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 30, right? And the reason for that is because as you get into those higher rep ranges, you're accumulating more metabolites, which is basically, it's a metabolic byproduct. It's a metabolic waste, like lactate or lactic acid, as most people think it's called, accumulating in the muscle. And when that happens, you get this tight, fatigued, burning feeling. It's the pump. It's the blood flow. It's this metabolic waste. I love it. Most of us do it. It's a great feeling. But what that causes is our body to have difficulty continuing to perform those reps, right? It's very difficult to continue pushing the reps when we get into those rep ranges and we're getting that feeling. So because of that, as the reps get higher, I make the gap bigger because everybody handles that metabolic waste differently. So that's a double progression method. We're just staying in that rep range. And what we want to do is, let's say it's 8 to 10 reps. I'm going to choose a weight that is heavy for 8, and my goal by the end of the mesocycle or the training block, that 4 to 6 week period, my goal is to do the same amount of weight for 10 reps. So if I did 3 sets of 10 with 100, or sorry, 3 sets of 8 with 100 pounds, my goal would be able to do 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds by the end of that training block. And if I do 3 sets of, like if I put 100 pounds on the bar and I do 10 my first set on the first week of this exercise, then I know I need to add weight, because we basically want to stay in between those reps. This also allows us to auto-regulate, because what happens if you're a little tight? You had bad sleep, you just came off of a travel in a trip, and you got on a plane, and you go under the bar and it says, I have to lift. This is the progression this week. It's 6 reps and we got to go heavier. Now I can't auto-regulate. I have to do what's on the paper. Now, some people understand you don't have to, but a lot of people don't. And a lot of people get influenced by that, me included, because we want to stick to the program. And that can easily lead to injury. So double progression method gives people permission to auto-regulate. It also allows people to follow RIR, which we'll get to in a minute. But essentially what this allows is like, hey, if you hit 8 reps and you have a couple more in the tank, go for it. Add load next set so that you can bring it back down to 8. But if you have more, go for more. And that's what this range gives us, okay? So, and after the last 15 years, I've just found that people can progress far better, far easier. They can then auto-regulate better. And it allows them to add load every single week more easily. And if they can't add load, it gives them permission to add reps. But it gives us multiple options. We can always increase our volume and our total progression because we're not stuck to progressing one single metric, which would be load. And then they can learn to really auto-regulate this. So double progression method is the method we use, and we do it for everything. So if it's an explosive movement, maybe it's like 2 to 4 reps or 3 to 5 reps. If it is a strength-based movement, it's most likely going to be at least 4, so maybe 4 to 6 or 6 to 8. If it's an accessory exercise, it might be anywhere between 6 to 8 or 8 to 10. If it's an isolation exercise, it's going to be either 10 to 12, 12 to 15, maybe 10 to 15, maybe 15 to 20. But we have this range, and it allows people to auto-regulate much better. So we use double progression method for everything, and I highly recommend most people do. Okay. Next, exercise sequencing. This is one that I am very passionate about. I think that there's a lot of people that really just underappreciate how valuable exercise sequencing is. Exercise sequencing is where program design is more of an art than it is science, because science has actually shown that exercise sequencing isn't that effective. But the problem is that I think they didn't really... It's a very difficult thing to use in a study, essentially, because you can actually individualize exercise selection depending on what the person is going through, what their primary focus is, and what your goal is. So, but I think it's really important to understand that this is where, if you ask any strength coach, they're going to tell you that this is a very, very underrated tool, and it's extremely important. So exercise sequencing, what this does is it's going to help us increase performance. It's going to reduce injury risk. It's going to help maintain mental focus and clarity throughout the session. And it's going to better manage your fatigue. So the way we sequence in our training plan and like our principle around exercise sequencing has a system around it. And that is activate, prime, compound, accessory, metabolic. So these are the type of exercises. We do an activation exercise, which is typically going to be body weight or using a band. We do this because it's low fatigue, it's low load, so the overall fatigue is low, the joint compression and fatigue is low. There's a constant resistance curve, which increases blood flow typically. It's not the best way to build muscle, but it is going to increase blood flow, which is helpful earlier in the session. And we're prioritizing muscle groups that are going to efficiently help our joints be more efficient in the movement we're about to do. So if I'm doing a bench press, I'm going to do band face pulls and pull downs and over and backs. So I'm doing a little bit of like dynamic movement, pump, external rotation, mobility on my shoulders. Then I'm going to go into a primer, which is going to be an explosive exercise. The goal here is to fire up my nervous system. That's going to happen with explosive exercises. But what we don't want to do is go super heavy, because then that increases load, fatigue, joint compression, and now we go into a heavy compound lift and hurt ourselves. Rather, if I'm doing a bench press, I'm going to do an explosive push-up. I'm going to do a chest throw. I'm going to do a chest slam, a wall throw, something explosive with my upper body, ideally mimicking that horizontal push pattern that I'm about to do under load, under the bar for a bench press. Then I go into the compound lift, which is literally the bench press. So if it was a squat, I would have done a jump and a hamstring curl and some side planks or something. But I do the compound lift. Then I'm going to move into accessory exercises, which is going to be the most physically and mentally demanding low-tier exercise of the day. So it's less fatiguing and demanding than the compound lift, but it's more fatiguing and demanding than the activation or the primer. It's also more so than the isolation or the metabolic work at the end. But this is where your lunges and your rows and your presses and your hip hinges and your hip thrusts and your RDLs, lateral stuff, anything that is going to work on your weak points. That's what an accessory exercise is. It's essentially like a supplemental exercise or an assistant exercise, both of which what they used to be called. So before it was called an accessory exercise, or synonymously, it would be called a supplemental exercise or an assistant exercise, because I'm assisting the movement. So a lunge can assist my squat pattern. A RDL or a hip thrust can assist my ability to deadlift better. So we have that there, and then we finish with metabolic. Now, metabolic is going to be either it can be sled work, farmer's carries, like some kind of like strongman circuit, if the goal is more like strength conditioning. It can be bicep curls, tricep pushdowns, lateral raises, like high rep bodybuilding stuff, if the goal is hypertrophy and muscle growth, because metabolic waste is metabolites, and that's going to happen from high reps, high volume. That's going to help produce muscle. There's some good research to show this builds muscle outside of just the volume of doing the exercises and getting that mechanical tension, but the actual metabolic waste, the metabolite byproduct, can actually have a muscle growth effect hormonally. And then lastly, if the goal is fat loss, it might be the assault bike. It might be running a mile. It might be sprints. It might be sled pulls for 20 minutes straight, like something to burn calories. But we go in this order: activate, prime, compound, accessory, metabolic. Every single session has to have exercise sequencing because it's very intentional. This is why we try to avoid plans that are moving around. So if somebody says, hey, can I swap exercises around if it's busy? The answer is no, because it can cause injury. And I know that sounds like I'm being a stickler, but my response is like either, hey, if it's going to be 30-minute wait, of course, remove that exercise. Let's swap it with a different one. I'll teach you different sub exercises to use so that you don't hurt yourself when going out of this exercise sequencing. But if it's only going to be, 5 minutes or so, just wait. Just be patient, stretch, do something, wait for your turn, and then get after it, because there is a very specific reason for the exercises to be in the order that they're in. So exercise sequencing is that one. Pull 1.5 times more than you push. So there's a lot of people that just say pull twice as much as you push, and that is a good way to go too. Our specific principle is pull 1.5 times more than you push, and you're going to prioritize horizontal versus vertical. So this is kind of just like our principle of pulling, let's say. Now, if you're doing 3 sets of pulls, you're going to do 4 to 5 sets, 3 sets of presses. Like you're doing 3 sets of bench press. You're going to do 4 to 5 sets of some kind of pull. If you are doing 4 sets of presses, you're going to do 6 sets of pulling in that session. The nice thing about this is if you throw some of the pulling exercises in the activation phase, you're going, like, even if it's a band pull apart or a face pull, you might not realize, but that is volume that adds to this and helps you keep that ratio good. Now, does every single person in the gym need to do this? No, probably not. But that's not the point of a principle inside of a program design framework. The point is to have a structured system and framework that actually gets results, prevents injuries, can be easily repeated client to client, and covers your bases like an insurance policy no matter what. And this principle, which is primarily specific to those who have bad posture, shoulder issues, lacking mobility, which, if we're being honest, is about 75% of people anyway, because most people sit all the time, then they drive to work, and then they sit at work, and then they drive home, and then they go to SoulCycle and they round their back, and then they do crunches at the gym because they want to get abs. It's like everything is rounding their spine and protracting and, their shoulders and getting into bad posture. But let's say you're the 25% that doesn't have shoulder issues necessarily. Well, this still isn't going to hurt. It's going to make your shoulders healthier. It's going to make your bench press better. It's going to make all your other pulling exercises better. You're going to have better posture. Your shirts are going to look better on your back and your traps. It just makes sense. Okay. Your back is super helpful for shoulder health, shoulder mobility, low back health, overall physique productiveness, and everything in between. Like, it is a very, very good thing for anybody to do. So for us, we're like, hey, this is a rule of thumb that allows us to ensure that anybody with bad posture is going to fix it slowly over time. And I know that really simplifies and dumbs it down, but I have worked with so many people, and I would venture to say, this isn't a stat, but this is my opinion, 75% of people who have shoulder pain or issues can reduce or remove it completely, but reduce it significantly or completely remove it by just doing more safe and smart pulling exercises than they're doing right now. Less pushing, more pulling, you will fix your shoulders 9 times out of 10. It's pretty crazy. It's very simple. I don't mean to simplify or dumb something down for all the rehab people and PTs, because there's a place where this won't solve the issue, at the end of the day. But it really does help most people, especially the average person that we're working with as online fitness coaches. So number one, it's going to ensure that nobody makes those worse, and those people who have it bad, they fix it. Number two, it's going to make sure that anybody who doesn't have it, but we don't want them to have it, prevents it. So now they're not getting it. And number three, it actually is the best way to supplement all other lifts anyway. Your back squat improves, your front squat improves, your deadlift improves no matter what variation you're doing. Your bench press will improve, your overhead press will improve. So all your main compound lifts get better when you have a stronger back. So for us, again, it never fails. Pull more than you press, specifically horizontal pulling more than vertical. But in general, we stick to the rule of thumb that it's 1.5, 1.5 times more volume on your pulling exercise than your pushing exercises. The next principle is including at least one unilateral exercise in every single session. Unilateral is often more functional. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because if I trip, I don't trip and perfectly land in a bilateral position with both feet on the ground. If I need to run out of the street because there's a car there, I don't hop. I don't do broad jumps on both feet like a frog. That's not how it works. If I get pushed over, I don't double hop backwards. I put one foot back into a staggered position to brace myself because something runs into me on the front. If something runs into me back and I'm not ready for it, I put 1 foot forward to a staggered stance. No matter what, you're always going in a staggered position. You're going downstairs, staggered position. You're going on a run, unilateral position. You roll your ankle on that run, unilateral position. It never fails. So it's more functional by a landslide. It helps isolate a single limb, which can eliminate weak sides. So most people have compensations, and most people do have a weak side no matter what. And most people end up having slightly different sides too, because if you just think about your lungs and different organs, your organs aren't all double and bilateral and perfectly evenly spread on each side. Even for the organs that have two on each side, there's a lot of people who have different sized organs, one on each side. My daughter's one of them. She has one kidney bigger than the other, led to a whole host of problems. And it's a genetic problem, so I probably have the same thing. But the point is there's a lot of reasons why we compensate. We can compensate and move our body because it gives us more room to breathe, because internally we have these imbalances from side to side. So it's impossible to completely remove imbalances, which is why unilateral training helps. But for those who have injury history, like myself, knee injury, that's going to lead to even more exacerbated and exaggerated imbalances and compensations, which means that doing something like this, having a unilateral exercise in every workout, is going to make sure that I'm doubling down on removing and improving those imbalances. And it can also help identify and improve them. So if you don't know where your imbalances are, do a bunch of single leg work or single arm work, you'll find your imbalances because you'll see what side's better. And it reduces the load on the spine. So if we're always doing bilateral movements, that's more total load on our spine, on our hips. If we do it in a single leg stance, a single arm stance, we are splitting that load in half. We're keeping the load on the muscle the same, but we are splitting the total load on the joint itself in half. And it doesn't work out perfectly like that with math, but it does help a lot. So in my experience and with our clients, just doing at least one in every session has been a really, really helpful way to ensure that we're getting in enough unilateral training and we're removing some of these imbalances and preventing further ones. So including at least one unilateral in every single session. Next one, implement ZOA exercises every session, just one at least. And this means zone of apposition. So basically what this means is this is choosing an exercise that is going to prioritize maintaining what's called a stacked position of your rib cage and your pelvis. So if we think of basically what this is like, we're reducing the likelihood that somebody's going to go into spinal extension too often or spinal flexion under load. So if we have a bar on our back and we round our spine a ton, it's probably not the best thing. If we have a bar on our back and we go into super, or like picking up off the floor, because if it's on your back, it'll probably fall off. But you go into like a super big spinal extension, hyperextend your back. That's not going to be an issue. So the best way to do it is to have a braced core, stiff trunk, and that's going to look like a stacked rib cage and pelvis. And so adding exercises in that help this is really huge for online coaching specifically. When I'm in the gym, somebody gets into a bad position, guess what I can do? Hey, you, rib cage down. Exhale on the top of that. Hey, take a second. Hey, let's cut 2 reps short. I can cue them. I can watch them. I can ensure that they're changing their exercises. They're stopping a couple reps short so we can drop the load. We're giving them a break. We are cueing them. We're saying, hey, pause at the top for a second, take a deep breath, exhale, pull the rib cage down. All right, let's get back to it. Those are cues that help people stay in good positions. I can't do that online. So what do I do to ensure that people don't go into these bad positions too often? Implementing ZOA exercises. So a zone of apposition exercise, again, stacked pelvis and rib cage, is going to help, because if, for example, somebody's getting fatigued while doing exercise, they are far more likely to go into extension or flexion or into a bad position. Mind you, I want them to get fatigued. Getting fatigued is how we stress the system to create adaptations that we are after. That's what they hired us for. So it's really important for us to make sure that we are choosing exercises that help them stay in good positions, because if they don't, it'll be self-regulating, right? It's essentially an exercises that they will fail. They will drop the kettlebells or the dumbbells or something if they don't do it properly. And so what this looks like would be, for example, a dumbbell or a double kettlebell. We'll stick with the same exercise I did earlier. A double kettlebell front rack reverse lunge. I have both the kettlebells up here. If I extend too much, I'm going to be in pain. My shoulders are going to go into impingement. I'm going to be in an awkward position. If I round forward, I'm going to drop the bells. The weight's going to pull them forward. You're basically stuck. If I do a half kneeling press, this is going to be like, especially with like a half kneeling landmine press, I'm in a position where I really can't hyperextend, because then I won't be able to reach the bar in front of me. I can't round forward because then my face is going to hit the bar. And it encourages, because of the split stance with one knee down, one knee up, it encourages your hip flexor to stretch and your rib cage to pull down, because I have one up, one down. So now I can easily cue them on paper and say, half kneeling position, fire your glutes, pull your rib cage down, lean into the bar. When they're doing this half kneeling position, it's hard not to do those things. I'm encouraging them to do it more, but it avoids them falling into a bad position. And there are a lot of different ZOA exercises, a lot of different movement selections and exercise variations that put you in a zone of apposition. But we do this in every session, and we don't do it too much, right? We don't want to be the like overly like quote unquote functional bodybuilding program that has like 18 variations of these weird exercises to look more functional. We want to have a program that gets the job done, but we sprinkle in these movements. So we just choose one every session. You know, it doesn't mean you can't do more than one, but throw in a half kneeling or a tall kneeling or a racked position, something that forces this at least once in each session to avoid them getting into the positions that can be problematic if they're done too much. All right. I think we're getting close. How many we got? We are on number, I don't know, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. Okay. So this next one is do not, and this is a good one to follow up the last one, don't repeat loading patterns. And what this specifically means is looking at how you're loading the weight on the exercise and making sure you're rotating these in and out. So for example, you can rack a barbell, you can do kettlebell racked front, you can do kettlebells at your sides, you can do dumbbells at your sides, you can do dumbbells in different positions. You can do it in a suitcase, you can do it contralateral, ipsilateral. So these are basically like offset or on the same side as the leg you're using. So if you're doing a contralateral lunge or an ipsilateral lunge, that is the difference between like an offset where I'm kettlebells in my left hand and I'm stepping back with the left leg so that it's the load is on the side of the movement that's going back, not on the stable foot, and then the opposite for ipsilateral, right? So point being is you can do all these, and for us, what we've noticed is that this avoids one potential injury risk. So for example, if you did a barbell back squat and then your next exercise was like a barbell racked reverse lunge or a good morning or something, it's just not a smart decision. You're probably loading your spine too much. But also you can get overuse injuries. This is partially why the old school like conjugate method, West Side barbell, what they did a lot of is they changed their compound lift every single week. So they would go like sumo deadlift, then trap bar deadlift, then straight bar deadlift, then conventional deadlift, then like rack pulls, then deficits. Like they would change it because they lifted so heavy they had to change it more often to avoid overuse injuries. But similarly, we're avoiding the same injury issue, overuse injuries. We don't want to load the same way over and over and over again, especially in a single session, and cause injuries. Now, if you do, you can do a back squat with a barbell multiple times in a single week. You can load dumbbells at your sides every single day of the week. It's not a don't repeat every day. It's don't repeat loading patterns in the same single session. Now, there's obviously certain ones that are safer to do. If you were to do a front racked or like a suitcase rack on the sides, that's probably going to be more acceptable to repeat in a single session. But we don't want to load the spine, like loading on your back multiple times. We don't want to do offset or contralateral, ipsilateral kind of stuff where we're having not only the movement pattern being low, but we're also having this anti-rotation, anti-lateral flexion movement because we're loaded on one side while doing an exercise, not the other side, right? So it's not a bilateral loading pattern, even if it's a bilateral movement. So saying all this, it's basically just really simple. Do not load it the same way. If we're looking at a leg day, maybe we've done the primer and the activation drill. Now we're doing the compound. The compound is a barbell back squat. Maybe the first accessory is going to be a hip hinge. Okay, well, I can do a hip thrust. I could do a barbell RDL, which it's still a barbell. It's not on my spine, so it's a little bit safer. But I would probably even go with a kettlebell or dumbbell staggered RDL for a lot of people, which allows me to go loaded on the sides a little bit, pull my shoulders back, sit into a better position, protect my low back, and I'm staggering my stance to reduce the load but still isolate the muscle. Then we might go into a dual kettlebell racked lunge. Right now I'm front racked and I'm doing a quad dominant movement. And then maybe my finisher is like a sled and a carry variation. Maybe for the carry variation, I do an offset exercise, like one racked up here, one down here for a kettlebell farmer's walk, or just one racked up top on one side. Now we have that contralateral loading. So what we're trying to do is really just avoid repeating the loading schemes and patterns throughout a single session and trying to switch those up. It's going to be more functional. You're going to avoid more injuries. You're going to avoid repeated loading patterns causing bad posture or overuse, aches and pains. And again, you're more functional. You're more athletic. You're more dynamic. You're being more capable of doing different types of loading. And we found that very effective. This one's simple and easy. And I've talked so much about hypertrophy on the podcast, and I've done whole episodes on this kind of stuff. So I'm going to keep this one pretty brief, but including 1 to 2 stretch-based movements. Study after study after study has now shown that an overloaded stretch, so a loaded stretch, is going to be the best and most effective way or best and most effective portion or range of motion during an exercise to build muscle. This is why if you're doing partial reps and it's at the top, the concentric, so for example, a leg press, if you're doing partial reps at the very top of the leg press, it's going to be way less effective than full range of motion. However, if we took the same load and we did partial range of motion at the bottom, when the quad's in the stretch position and the glutes are in the stretch position, you would actually build more muscle doing partials than you would full range of motion, because you're loading in doing those partials, you're loading the stretched part of the movement. You're loading a stretched muscle, right? And a lengthened muscle at the bottom. And because they're partials, you're probably actually going to get more reps in, which is really common because a lot of that metabolite or lactic acid feeling is going to be at the concentric. That's going to be when you contract the muscle harder. And so you can actually do more reps with the same load if you do just partials at the bottom, right? And I'm not saying always do partials, but there's certain exercises we can preferentially put in there, like a RDL that stretches the hamstrings, or a chest fly that stretches the chest, or a deficit push-up stretches the push-up, or a dumbbell incline bench hammer curl, because the neutral grip and the shoulders extended in that incline bench position is actually going to stretch the bicep as much as possible. Lat pull down or a lat pull over. So we're just trying to encourage the stretch because it's good for the flexibility of your muscle tissue, but it's also going to be more promotive of hypertrophy and muscle growth. So especially when a client's goal is body composition or muscle growth, we definitely want to do this. But regardless, what we try to do is just, for everybody, let's put 1 in every single session. And if somebody's really focused on hypertrophy, we might bump that up to 2, right? If it's like a physique-based client. Next principle is about conditioning. 1 to 2 aerobic conditioning sessions per week, 30 to 45 minutes each. I would say our standard is 1. Like, everybody should have an aerobic day. Even my like bodybuilding style clients who are just prioritizing muscle growth in the off season will still do a day of cardio. Even if it's boring stair stepper cardio, I don't care. You need cardio for good health. Aerobic conditioning just helps us on so many levels. Ideally, we can get a couple in, but at least 1 is going to be really helpful. And this is something that helped me a lot. And this is beyond just 7 to 10K steps. For a long time, I was like, you know what? Just lift, walk a lot, you're good. But I really do find that clients have better body compositions. They have better digestion, better health, better blood sugar, better cardiovascular. They sleep better. Their energy systems are better. A lot of people don't realize that their blood flow and their circulation is going to be better. We think of that because of our cardiovascular system, but we forget that when our circulatory system improves, that means your pumps in the gym improve. That means your recovery between sessions improves. It improves your aerobic system and your oxidative system in turn from the aerobic system improving. What does that mean? It means that you deliver more oxygen to the blood cells in between reps, in between sets, and in between sessions day to day, which means that you can literally lift heavier, harder, longer than most people because you recover faster. They even did a study where these are the coolest kind of studies. They trained one leg and then the other leg separately on the same person. So you can't say that it's two different people in a study, which means that one could have had genetic, a better genetic kind of system where their genetics led them to building more muscle. So it's like, this is really dope because what this allowed us to do is go, okay, we have one person, two legs. One leg is doing the cycle. They did like a single leg cycling. So they were basically doing cardio for one leg. And this negates all the like major health benefits for like cardiovascular system because you're not getting your heart rate up enough. It's not a total body exercise, but you're still moving. You're still getting your heart rate up. But the blood flow and the what's called mitochondrial adaptations were very specific to that single limb. And that limb built more muscle because it was paired with leg training. So they did like leg extensions and leg press, and then they did one leg did this. So two bilateral movements, leg extension, leg press, and then the one leg did the bike. That leg built more muscle. And it's because of this mitochondrial adaptation that happens with cardio. So it's really, really smart. It's really, really good. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. It's going to help with health and muscle and strength and everything. It's kind of like, why wouldn't you? So I think that's really important. Last two, we have set volume with 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. The range of 10 to 20 sets is pretty like generic. It's mostly talked about it's talked about a lot in different research studies in hypertrophy circles with researchers and coaches. It was made popular by Renaissance Periodization and Mike Isotel of having this like volume landmarks kind of thing. And I think it's good. And, for the average person, they're going to be far better off sticking towards 10. And then the more advanced person goes up to 20, but it's a bell curve. And so it actually kind of comes back down to 10 because what happens is when we have a brand new person, we want to get 10 sets per muscle group to make sure that we are building muscle, especially with the muscle groups that they really want to build. What are the muscle groups that really highlight their specific goals? Let's make sure that those muscles are getting 10 sets. Maybe some of the other muscles get 5 or like less than 10 in general. And then we can have 10 for the ones that matter most. And then we slowly increase those over time. But what happens is as we increase those towards 20, they build muscle. So they're basically progressing their total sets per week, per muscle group with their level of experience and advancement in the gym. But at a certain point, they also start advancing their strength, their nervous system, their motor control. And what that means is that they get better at exercising. They control the movements better. They're able to have a better mind-muscle connection. They recruit more motor units and muscle fibers in every single rep. All of these things build more muscle and create more mechanical tension. Not to mention, they help you get stronger, which leads to heavier loads. All these things happen and fatigue goes up. Your nervous system is taxed more. Your joints are under more load and stress. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you're advancing beyond the 20 sets per week, but not in the way that most people think. It means that we actually have to reduce volume. So it is a bell curve. Usually it starts at 10, goes towards 20, and then it actually comes back to that like 15 sets per muscle group per week mark to maximize hypertrophy in a functional way. But this just allows us to kind of like safely say that we're doing enough to build muscle, but we're not doing so much that people are in the gym for hours and hours and hours most of the time. And then the last principle for this podcast and these set of training principles is to use the RIR scale. Straight up, I think that the RIR scale works way better than the RPE scale. So this is reps in reserve versus rate of perceived exertion for people training in the gym. RPE was initially created for endurance. So it went way beyond an RPE of 10, like a scale of 1 to 10. And it was used for people to rate their perceived exertion at what point they're in the run. So they're an hour into their long marathon endurance and they're rating their perceived exertion to figure out how much more fuel they need to take in and what pace they should stay at during the run. And it was adapted for powerlifting, and then we adopted it for strength training for everyday people. But RIR it's so much easier to understand because at the end of the day, it's reps in reserve. How many reps do you have left in the tank? If you're doing a set of 10 and your RIR is 9, you pick a load that you can do 9 reps with and you do 10 with it. Like it's very, very simple. You pick if you're doing an RPE 9, you would do, or RIR 1, you are going to pick a weight that you can do 11 with and you do 10 because you get to 10, you have 1 rep left in the tank. That's the whole point. It's just way easier to gauge because you can match it up and line it up with your reps. It's also a tool that allows us to test our clients and how intense they're actually training, which is rarely hard enough and that's not a shot at my clients or anybody that are members of our company. At the end of the day, nobody trains hard enough until there's a camera watching or somebody's calling them out, or you're lifting with somebody who's trained harder than you. And then you realize, I don't train hard enough. I do the same thing. When the camera's on, I train way harder. And every time I'm like, damn, okay. And it's natural. Our mind slows us down more than our body does. So it's important to use this because we can gauge it, and we can use certain tactics and tools by fluctuating the RIR, setting up like failure sets, setting up like ranges of reps, and just sticking the RIR. Like, hey, I want you this week, you're going to hit anything between 5 and 15 reps with the same weight you did last week on that exercise, but we're going to do an RIR of 0. So now they take the same load and maybe they do 3 or 4 more reps than they normally do. And it makes them realize they could have gone harder. They could have lifted heavier, and they're stronger than they realized. So it's a really good tool for gauging intensity, prescribing the right intensities to your client, teaching clients how to go hard enough and really understand how strong they actually are, and empowering clients to realize they're stronger than they thought they were. So those are the principles. We got a full hour in there. So 12 training principles to prioritize when writing online training programs. 4 to 6 week training blocks. Push, pull, hinge, squat. Stick with those 4 movement patterns. Double progression method over any other progression. Exercise sequencing has to be included in every session. Pull 1.5 times more than you push, preferentially horizontal pulling than vertical pulling. Include at least 1 unilateral exercise, so single arm or single leg, every single exercise, every single session. Implement 1 ZOA, zone of apposition exercise every session. Don't repeat your loading patterns, and include 1 to 2 stretch-based exercises. There's a few more. I had to scroll down. 1 to 2 aerobic conditioning sessions per week. Set volume between 10 to 20 sets, and then RIR used on everything over RPE. That is the training principles. If you don't have principles in place for your programs, I think you're missing a big key to success in your programming, in your coaching, and in your business. So make sure you do that. If you want to steal mine or adapt mine, that is totally fine. Be my guest. That's why I put it out there. I want to lead the industry with good, smart, evidence-based training, and this is part of me doing my part in that. So if you like the podcast, please do me a huge favor. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Subscribe to this podcast everywhere there's podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, please, if you have not already. That's what helps us grow. Share this with a friend that needs it. And I would say save this podcast if you're a coach. Come back to it again, because you're probably going to need a pad and a paper next time if you didn't have one this time. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you being here.